I am here today. It's Teresa Larone. It's for my inquiry project. I'm interviewing a dear colleague of mine. Her name is Ms. Waywell, and she has so kindly offered to have this interview with me. Ms. Waywell has experience teaching grades 4, 5, and 6, and my inquiry question is what are the differences between grades 4 and 5 versus 6, both with engaging the students and classroom management. So, Kelly or Ms. Waywell, my first question, what is your personal experience regarding teaching or the differences between grades 4 and 5 versus grade 6 with respect to classroom management and or engaging the students?
Okay, great. I would say, first of all, I'll admit that my experience teaching grade 4 is somewhat limited because I've been a student teacher in grade 4. I've been teaching now for just 12 and a half years. But I've virtually every year taught grade 6 or a 5-6 split.
Right.
So accordingly, I guess I've had to use a lot of the similar methods with the students because I've been dealing with the same grades in the same room. However, there is definitely a change that takes place in grade 6 in terms of their social influences, I would say, and that has a big impact on classroom management, or can have a big impact on classroom management. I think a big part of managing the students in grade 6 or a class of grade 6 students has to do with understanding the individuals and, unfortunately, sometimes understanding the difficult dynamics that can happen within that class. We're in a school here that doesn't have many transient students. Generally, they're here from JK onwards. And often the same, that familiarity does breed some annoyances, which, again, comes into the classroom and affects how you're going to keep things calm and keep the learning happening.
Is that familiarity with you or with each student?
I would say, well, I can comment on both of them.
Okay.
As a student, I would say that whereas I suppose if you've got a school where a lot of kids are in or move out partway through and you've got a flow of students coming in, they don't have enough time to kind of let the people's quirks become annoyances to them.
Right.
But I find that, or they don't have a history of having had conflict back in grade 1 or 2.
Right.
By the time they reach grade 6, these issues become more and more of a cause of conflict for them.
Okay.
On what you were talking about teachers, it actually works really well here as well because we can watch. I can observe the students very closely as they're in the grade 4 context in grade 5, so I know what to expect by the time they're in grade 6.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, so no, it really helps to have that familiarity, and I've built a relationship with them.
The relationship, really. Okay.
Whether it's because of extracurriculars or just saying hi to them in the hall.
Right. Okay.
So I know this doesn't really address the 5-6 differences, but I'm hoping
Right. Okay. No, that's fine.
We can get to that.
Okay. So my second question, again, in your personal experience, just relating to classroom management and engagement.
Okay.
Between grades 4 and between 6 and 4 and 5 as a group.
Yeah.
Is there a bigger challenge keeping grade 6 engaged, and what kind of strategies might you use, or just again, what has worked?
Great. Okay. I think that there is a somewhat of a difference, and I do have to think some of it has to do with you've got a different social emphasis. The grade 6s are already building big networks on social media.
Right.
There's the boy-girl thing that happens usually around spring for the grade 6s, and they're pulling away somewhat from their families, I suppose, and forming allegiances within the classroom.
Okay.
So you do have cliques developing, and I find that can sometimes, or you can find cliques sometimes, some years, and strategic seating, again, knowing who your students are and what may lead to some distractions
Right.
is crucial.
Okay.
Trying to think of,
When
as
you
far as learning strategies
Okay.
go, I think throughout, I'm a real proponent of social learning, but you just have to be that much more careful in, I think, the older grades to ensure that they're with a group that they are compatible with.
Right.
That's always an issue,
Right.
but it's even more so you're not just thinking about either having a heterogeneous or a homogeneous group, but
Right.
you're also thinking of what are the dynamics going to be here, and do
yeah.
I have to
Right.
do I have to really be careful about this, including this particular person in this group?
Right, and you really need to know
Yes.
that those people and their personalities and the
That's
history,
right.
like you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So that really, really helps.
And
Okay.
I was also going to add, ironically, I think sometimes social learning works even more effectively for those groups that do have some social challenges, just because they are already used to dealing with each other all the time.
Right.
Whether they've had some challenges in the past, they also are very collaborative in some ways.
Right.
So you're able to somehow pull that out of them. They're comfortable chatting with each other.
Right.
Usually, as long as you've balanced those groups properly.
Okay, and you'll do it sometimes by trial and error. It doesn't always
It
works,
absolutely,
right?
and what might work in September might not work, or the grouping might not work later on
Yeah.
if something's happened in between.
And you always group them. Is that the only solution, or
I don't think that's the only solution.
not a
I do.
recommended method?
Well, no, and obviously I do whole class activities as
Yeah.
well, and I use the usual methods that anybody
Yes,
uses.
right.
You know, the drawing people's attention, the walking around,
Yeah.
the various strategies that way.
Right.
But I'm just thinking in terms of the older children, I think you have this element that's not there with
Yes.
even sometimes the 4s and 5s.
Yeah, and that's a
It is and
huge
it
peer
isn't.
pressure at this.
It can
occurs.
be.
Yeah.
It can be, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I think you've actually addressed the next question, which is looking back. What would you approach a certain situation differently? Have you ever like run into grade problems because of not being aware of what's going on in grade 6? Maybe in your very first years, like has
Absolutely.
it been like an absolute
Absolutely.
nightmare or whatever? Like,
Well,
you
I
know?
think the first couple of years were certainly an eye opener for me.
Yeah.
Coming into teaching as my second, third career.
Right.
But I think that I didn't always know. I didn't always see the undercurrent, or I didn't always gauge what conflicts were in existence, and
Right.
also. I think I was still learning about the strategies you need to use for students who are facing not just social challenges, but the learning challenges.
Right.
So that caused problems. This part might have to be edited.
Okay, no problem.
Because I just want to think about this for a second.
Right.
So, new to teaching strategy. How would I approach things differently?
But you did sort of learn the personality of the students and their learning challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that can also like in those kids might try to exclude because they want to be on the in group, or you know what I'm
Yes.
saying. So if
Yes.
that one child doesn't really suit their
That's
their
absolutely
group,
right.
it could be
Yeah.
exclusion, which would be very, very hard, especially
Yeah.
for the learning challenges, right? Is that
Exactly,
you found that out?
exactly, and you know, certain students who might be ostracized in a certain
Yeah.
situation, and if they're very shy about
Yes.
opening up about it, and all of these things are going to affect their ability to learn,
Yeah.
their
Right.
stress levels, and so on.
That
So
causes a lot of stress for them. The
It
social
does.
aspect is
It
more
does.
so magnified once they get into grade 6, right?
it is.
Yeah.
And I
okay.
guess the theme I'm hitting on time and time again is just how much that social component has an effect on their learning, and how I'm going to approach any particular learning situation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't, like I said, I don't mean to say that we're always doing group activities, but
No.
but I do find that is the way that a lot of these students learn best.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But it's almost harder to manage. Oops.
Oh, low battery.
It's still going. I think it was still
Yeah.
going, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it makes it harder to manage because now you have that social aspect, that pressure in that class, and the hormones. And you're saying like they're becoming attracted to each other and all that kind of thing happening. It makes it that much more challenging.
Yes, you may
Okay.
want to talk to me again in like May, June this year. I'll have some stories. But,
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what? That insight is incredibly valuable because it's not just about portraying a subject and getting them to learn it and repeating. It's now you got all these complex underlying issues.
Yes.
Yes, and one of the things I was thinking of investigating was introducing social media in the class in an ethical sense where you
Yes.
don't necessarily post online unless it's like a blog where everyone has access and it's a specific topic that gives them that
Yes.
opportunity to discuss online. Those kind of aspects is part of my inquiry. But more so than anything, just confirming my thought that yes, grade 4 or 5 that compared to grade 6 is very different. So
It is.
it's not just should not necessarily all be lumped into junior because now the grade 6 seems to be more like an intermediate level, right? That might be something
Well, I
to
think,
consider.
you know what, I do think that because we've talked before about it being
Yeah.
a transition year, it's
Right.
a bridging year.
Yeah.
I can see some utility in having some groupings 4, 5, 6, some groupings 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, right.
And we don't do that a lot in terms of
No.
the teachers,
Yeah.
PD opportunities and so forth.
Right.
And I think a lot of the same issues that grade 6s have are or that intermediates have are in the grade 6
Yes.
context
Right.
as well.
Right.
So-
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Ms. Maywell.
You're
I very much
very
appreciate
welcome.
it. Okay.
Yeah, thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.